All right, welcome back to Newsmax Now. Michael Avenatti is in even more legal trouble tonight. A grand jury in Los Angeles indicted him on a 36-count indictment, including fraud, perjury, failure to pay 3 years' worth of taxes, embezzlement, and other financial crimes. If convicted on all counts, Avenatti could go to jail, well, for 335 years. Not really, but that's what he's facing, according to the Los Angeles Times. Avenatti denies all of the charges, but there is one allegation in particular that's getting a lot of attention. Prosecutors say Avenatti ripped off a client who is mentally ill, paraplegic, and was receiving disability payments. Avenatti negotiated a $4 million settlement for his client, Jeffrey Johnson, who became paralyzed while in jail. But prosecutors say Avenatti kept most of that settlement for himself, and Johnson only got $124,000 of that multi-million-dollar settlement. Also, Johnson's Social Security payments were cut off last year because prosecutors say Avenatti failed to respond to a request from the Social Security Administration. Now, the man known for being adult film star Stormy Daniels' attorney was already in hot water for allegedly trying to extort money, $25 million to be exact, from Nike. Joining us now to discuss this is former federal prosecutor Larry Klayman. Larry, good to talk to you again. Thanks for being here.
Nice seeing you. How are you been?
I've been all right. Better than Michael Avenatti, I can say quite safely. Larry, U.S. Attorney Nick Hanna says Avenatti's alleged crimes are all linked to one another. He would use money he embezzled from clients to pay off other people and finance his business and personal expenses. This is what's often referred to as a Ponzi scheme, right?
Well, absolutely. And the scary part here is, John, is that he seems to relish the notoriety. You know, it's been in the news in the last several weeks that the only thing worse than bad publicity is no publicity at all. There are a few others out there who take that position. But I wouldn't want this kind of publicity. And he doesn't seem to be very concerned about it, which, he may have some kind of issue. He might want to go see a psychiatrist or something because he's in deep trouble.
Well, he seems pretty confident he'll be cleared in all this. And I want to be clear, these are just charges at this point, and Avenatti, like everybody else, deserves due process. But Larry, for a lawyer, isn't this like the original sin, the worst thing you can do, stealing money from one of your clients, if it did in fact occur?
Yeah, that's fatal. That's fatal, John. I mean, if you're found to have done that, you lose your license. But in this case, as you pointed out, he could get 300 and some years. It's even worse. But, looking at the demeanor of this fellow from day one, and I'm not here to disparage him or anything like that, but, he seems to be in his own world. He doesn't even know what trouble he's in. And that's the most frightening thing about this whole thing from any perspective, whether you're a lawyer or not. He just seems to be living on Pluto.
Well, he seems to enjoy the limelight, as you indicated, and unfortunately we had to say goodbye to our friend Dr. Lauren Wright, but she was talking about her expertise and her research in this new idea of political amateurism. And remember we were talking about Michael Avenatti possibly running for president?
Yeah, well, who can say whether he'll run for president or not? If you look at what's on the Democratic side, this is my own opinion, there's probably those that are just as bad as Michael Avenatti right now.
Well, at least nobody that's announced their candidacy is facing multiple indictments, embezzlement, fraud charges, etc. at this stage in time. As you mentioned, he's facing 36 charges in total, 335 years in prison. Let's say he is convicted on just a few of these. Do you actually see him getting jail time for something like this?
Yeah, when a lawyer does something like this, they actually throw the book to a greater degree at them because a lawyer should know better than doing this. And he's not a likable character, whether you ever agreed with him or not in the way he went after President Trump with Stormy Daniels and the other one. He's not likable. So he's going to sell pretty badly in front of a jury. And he's got a lot ahead of him in terms of difficulty in trying to quit himself.
Well, today he tweeted this: I intend to fully fight all the charges and plead not guilty. I look forward to the entire truth being known as opposed to a one-sided version meant to sideline me. For 20 years, I've represented David's versus Goliath and relied on due process and our system of justice along the way. I have made many powerful enemies, and I am entitled to a full presumption of innocence. He certainly is, and I'm confident that justice will be done once all the facts are out. So, sounds like a lawyer there in his tweets today. We'll move on from that one, Larry. I also want to get your take on this Greg Craig gentleman, the former Obama White House counsel who was indicted today on charges of making false statements and concealing information in a federal foreign lobbying investigations with ties to the Russia investigation. Now, the 74-year-old is accused of willfully concealing material facts from the Justice Department about work he performed for the Ukrainian government. Does this indictment change anything with regard to the Russia investigation? Why the timing now? We heard there weren't going to be any more indictments related to this investigation. What's behind the timing of all this?
Well, number one, it may have been sealed. Maybe they just made it public today. I know Gregory Craig very well. I've been up against him a number of times. First of all, he represented the National Council of Churches in the Elian Gonzalez matter, where he made an effort on behalf of the Clinton administration to get Elian sent back to Castro. Then he was the head of the impeachment defense for President Bill Clinton. I was working on that at Judicial Watch with Congressman Bob Barr and others. And I also met him in the last few years. It was the first time I ever actually sat down with one of these Clinton lawyers other than across a courtroom or a phone or whatever on a legal matter, because he wanted something from me with regard to a client. And it was very interesting. He said to me, Larry, you know, I only lasted for a few months with President Obama because I couldn't stand working there. Frankly, he was so arrogant, I quit. But here's the bottom line. I believe that he is being indicted so Mueller can show that he's, quote, even-handed. What Craig is accused of doing with regard to the Foreign Lobbying Registration Act is nothing that doesn't happen routinely in Washington, D.C. And because General Flynn was potentially charged with that before he pled out to a perjury count, I think that Mueller's trying to show that he's an even-handed individual. And frankly, I don't know that Gregory Craig is going to be convicted of this. It's not. So you think
you think Craig is a patsy in all this?
I do. I think he's a patsy. And I do believe that there's a lot of politics swirling around in Washington, D.C. However, the fact that he's been indicted makes it more difficult for others who have been indicted for lying under oath to ultimately plead out or even get pardons, because now there's a precedent that is coming down on all sides, including the so-called criminal referrals of Congressman Nunes for lying under oath. It seems to be the season for bringing indictments and criminal referrals for lying under oath. And that is serious. And that's the reason that President Bill Clinton, ironically, was impeached himself.
Right. And lying under oath, not just a process crime, a serious offense, as you indicated there. Larry Klayman, great to see you, former federal prosecutor. Always a pleasure to talk to you.
You too.